Welcome to Nuclear Revenge, Episode 1. In this series, you'll hear some of the most ruthless, shocking, and unforgettable revenge stories ever shared. Some are cold, some are calculated, and some go far beyond what anyone would expect. Let's get started. She stole my money, took my house, and drove me into debt. Now it's time to ruin your life. My ex stole nearly 90,000 euros, money I had spent 9 long years saving. When I took her to court, I lost. There wasn't enough evidence. At that moment, I felt completely destroyed. Like I had lost everything. Then things got even worse. She sued me for emotional damages, and somehow I was ordered to pay her 55,000 euros. I had no choice. I sold my house, and I took out a massive bank loan. I moved in with a friend. He helped me find an incredible lawyer. Honestly, he was the best decision I ever made. In a single day, he got more done than anyone else had in months. He even managed to obtain information about who had withdrawn the money from my bank account. That's when something didn't add up. On June 29th, a transaction was made in my name, but I never made it. I wasn't even in the country that day, so we decided to build the entire case around that fact. I was already preparing to go back to court. Then I discovered my ex had bought my old house. But there was one thing she didn't know. Inside that house, hidden behind a cabinet in the bathroom, was a secret safe. I had never told her it existed, and after everything she had done to me, I wanted to ruin her life, just like she had ruined mine. I asked a man who agreed to become my accomplice to buy about 400 euros worth of illegal drugs. With the help of a friend, we hid them inside the secret safe. The safe used a 4-digit code, 0000. I had never bothered to change it. Before taking her back to court, I asked that same friend to anonymously report her to the police. About a week later, the police obtained a search warrant. For nearly 2 hours, they searched the entire house. Nothing. They couldn't find anything. And honestly, they never would have if my friend hadn't accidentally left the safe door open. Inside, the officers found the drugs, worth about 400 euros. The charges carried a 5,000 euro fine and up to 12 years in prison. But that wasn't the end. Court finally came. This time, my lawyer obtained the surveillance footage from the bank. He also gathered official records, proving I wasn't even in the country when the money disappeared. Then, we traced the account where all the money had been transferred. It belonged to my ex. Suddenly, everything changed. My lawyer demanded the return of every euro she had stolen, the return of my house, compensation for emotional damages, and an amount equal to twice my bank debt, nearly 140,000 euros. You should have seen the look on her face when everything collapsed. Every lie, every scheme, every excuse, gone. It was worth every second. In the end, she was sentenced 12 years for drug possession and another 25 years for theft and perjury. Enjoy prison. My ex-fiancé ignored my boundaries, so I married his best friend. Back in 2019, I let my long-term boyfriend move into my house. The only reason I agreed was because of a series of bad life decisions he had made himself. For most of our relationship, things were unstable, but I was young, naive, and I truly believed he wanted to commit. I thought we were building a future together. By the beginning of 2020, we were engaged. At the time, I was a full-time university student. I was also the sole caregiver for my intellectually disabled mother. I took care of the house, the pets, and almost every responsibility by myself. Meanwhile, my fiancé worked a regular 40-hour-a-week minimum wage job, and somehow, he still refused to help with anything. Then, Christmas of 2020 arrived. That's when I discovered he had been cheating on me, a detail he had conveniently forgotten to mention. It turns out, he had already been planning to leave me. The funny part? Everyone knew, except me. The only reason he stayed was because he couldn't find another place to live. Apparently, the woman he had been sleeping with didn't like him enough to let him move in with her. By then, I was already over him. I expected him to move out within a few weeks. Instead, 3 entire months passed, and he hadn't even started looking for another place. If anything, he became even more entitled. By that point, he was basically a freeloader living in my living room. I was already preparing to file an eviction notice and throw him off my couch. Then one day, he started scrolling through Tinder with the volume turned all the way up. I calmly asked him not to do that in front of me. I told him it was incredibly disrespectful and that he could do it in private. He ignored me. That's when I finally snapped. I looked at him and said, "I'll sleep with one of your friends." Honestly, it was supposed to be an empty threat, something I'd never actually do. There was just one problem. I'm the kind of person who follows through. So I messaged the guy who was supposedly my ex's best friend. He was even supposed to be the best man at our wedding. As it turned out, he didn't even consider my ex a close friend. In fact, my ex had treated him terribly. For years, we started talking, sharing stories, laughing about everything we had both gone through. And before long, we realized we actually liked each other. I was completely honest with him. I told him exactly why I had messaged him. In the first place, nothing was hidden. Nothing was fake. 2 years later, we got married. He stood beside me as I earned my bachelor's degree, the very degree my ex never believed in. Today, I'm already halfway through my master's degree. My husband has a stable, well-paying job. He supports our family. He encourages my dreams, and he treats me with the respect I should have had all along. As for my ex, from what I've heard, he was eventually kicked out of his father's house. The woman he cheated on me with never built a real relationship with him, and after all these years, he still hasn't done anything to improve his life. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply building a better life without them. My grandfather gave up the time he had left to get revenge for me. As a child and teenager, I struggled with severe mental health issues. My mother was a drug addict, and my father preferred to pretend I didn't exist because I was the result of a one-night stand. He had cheated on his wife with my mother. Needless to say, his wife hated me, and their children treated me terribly. The only kind people in my life were my paternal grandparents. I loved them, and I spent a lot of time at my grandfather's business. Everything started falling apart when I was 14. I won't go into the details, but my mother nearly died, and I met a guy. Let's call him Goat. He really did look like one. Goat was 25 years old, and he abused me in every possible way. At the time, I believed I loved him, so I didn't see his behavior as a problem. He drove a wedge between me and my grandparents and isolated me from them for 2 years until one of my friends helped me escape. Over the following year, Goat stalked me, threatened me, and left me living in constant fear. I was too terrified to go to the police, and I also didn't want to bring any attention to my grandfather's business. For a while, I lived with friends because my panic attacks had become unbearable, along with what I now know was PTSD. I couldn't stand being alone. Around the same time, my grandmother, the only ray of light in my life, passed away. Things only got worse after that. I started drinking, going to parties, and trying to forget my life. On my 18th birthday, Goat came back into my life as I was walking home from a party. He attacked me, beat me nearly to death, and almost killed me. Someone found me, took me to the hospital, and asked me to call an adult who could come speak with the doctors. I tried calling my father, but he didn't answer. Knowing my mother wouldn't help, I called my grandfather. He arrived at the hospital immediately. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen this man, the one who had built his own business empire, truly cry. He hadn't even cried at my grandmother's funeral. In the end, I spent 2 months in the hospital. The police questioned me, and my grandfather was by my side every single day. During that time, he got to know the friend who had helped me escape Goat years earlier, and the two of them became very close. For an entire year, my grandfather helped me get back on my feet. Then one day, he gathered a large group of relatives together and spent hours talking with everyone. I was there too. I'll never forget that evening. We went out for ice cream, and afterward he hugged me tightly for a long time, reassuring me that everything was going to be okay. The very next day, my grandfather began his revenge. He owned a successful law firm, and there were private investigators working in a small office inside his building. He tracked Goat down, then he got his revenge. My grandfather shot Goat 3 times in the stomach and once in the chest. Goat died in the hospital later that same day. Almost immediately afterward, my grandfather was arrested and sentenced to prison for manslaughter, a crime he openly confessed to. I never got the chance to visit him in prison because not long afterward, he died from complications related to his health. A week after my grandfather's death, his lawyer called me. He asked me to come to his office, where a long letter from my grandfather was waiting for me. It was filled with love. In the letter, he explained that he had learned he had terminal lung cancer and didn't have much time left to live. But he couldn't leave this world knowing Goat was still out there. He couldn't leave me alone without taking Goat with him. My grandfather left me almost everything. At just 20 years old, I inherited his law firm and was free to do whatever I wanted with it. I also inherited 95% of his savings, the house where he and my grandmother had lived, and the rest of his assets. I wanted my father to realize I wasn't going to save him. My parents divorced when I was in first grade. Not only did my father disappear like Houdini, but before he left, he stole my mother's bank card and drained her personal savings account. My mom is a saint. She barely reacted. She continued to speak kindly of him, and she never said a single bad word about him. So, even though he had abandoned us, he was still my hero. From 1st through 5th grade, I lived the typical life of a child abandoned by her father. He visited once, maybe twice a year, at least 50 times. I sat by the window with my suitcase packed, waiting for him to come take me to his house, but he never showed up, every single time. Still, my mother defended him. She never spoke badly about him, so, in my eyes, he remained my hero. When I was in 6th grade, my mother finally remarried. My father, who had nothing but an 8-month-old baby picture of me in his wallet, was furious. I should also mention, he never paid child support to avoid being held accountable. He used his father's social security number because they had the same name. After my mom remarried, he made it clear that my stepfather was now responsible for me. He stopped speaking to me completely. We had no relationship until I graduated from high school. He didn't come to my graduation. He didn't even send a card. Instead, he mailed me a letter thanking God that he no longer had to pay child support. Not that he had ever paid it in the first place. What finally broke me was the relentless cruelty he aimed at my mother. He mocked her weight, her appearance, her teeth, and every flaw he believed I had. He blamed on her. That was the moment I finally realized what a pathetic piece of trash he really was. Then, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, I wasn't his daughter. I was just damaged goods. That day, I made myself a promise. One day, I would make him hurt. 10 years later, after showing no interest in my wedding or the birth of my son, my father suddenly reached out. He wanted help. He was diabetic. One of his organs was failing. He didn't have much time left. He was far down the transplant waiting list, and he needed someone in the family to become a living donor. Nuclear revenge activated. I answered every one of his letters. Eventually, I agreed to meet him. I pretended I didn't hate him. I went through all the compatibility testing, blood work, medical exams, psychological counseling, meetings with doctors, even sessions with his therapist. Finally, the results came back. I was a perfect match. The surgery was scheduled. On the morning of the operation, we met at the hospital. He looked relieved, hopeful. For the first time in years, he actually smiled at me. I smiled back. Then I calmly said, I'm not going through with the surgery. The look of confusion on his face is something I'll never forget. Before he could say a word, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, I just wanted you to know something. You're not my father. You're just damaged goods. Then I turned around, walked out of the hospital, got into my car, and drove home. My mother was furious. She couldn't believe I had taken things that far. My father is going to die soon, and out of pure spite, I plan to attend his funeral. Then, I'll tell everyone there exactly what kind of piece of trash he really was. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. If you have any thoughts about what happened, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.